Hello, good morning. Welcome. This is Sunrise Daily. I'm Ayo Makinde.
It's December the 14th. Now, I'm doing the date check today because I'm counting down to Christmas. It's, that's 11 days now to Christmas. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
Well, good morning from Abuja. It's a nice day here. The fog seems to have cleared somewhat. I don't know what the day holds. I'm Malkwa Ogun Yusuf. Welcome to the program.
Well, one of those things that one usually fears is the kind of activities that people get into in the course of time. And one of those things that has scared everyone over time is the issue of drug abuse. And the problem of it isn't just going to go away. And clearly, some institutions of government have been mandated to do something about that, such as the NDLEA. But it's not just for the NDLEA. Several other agencies are also interested. In this case, the NDDC has taken up the campaign against drug abuse. And Bukola, what's your take on that? You worked on that story, with that story yesterday.
Well, indeed, it's heartwarming to see that the NDLEA is going beyond the mandate of ensuring the provision of infrastructure and, the sustainability of systems in the Niger Delta region to, the welfare of the youth, the mental welfare of the youth now in the Niger Delta region, by taking the campaign of, sensitizing them about the dangers of the use and abuse of illicit substances to the youth. Now, not just, a broad category of the youth now, to young people as young as those in high schools, what we call secondary schools here in the country. So it's interesting to see that the youths also, have keyed into this program. If we went by the interaction that our reporter had with some of those youths in that story. So whether it's methamphetamine, sweet codeine, we remember that documentary from an international media organization from some years back, whether it's a tramadol, the sensitization is key to help the youths, become aware of the dangers of use and abuse, because it's difficult for a dog to learn new habits, in its old age. But when you take the campaign to the youth, to the young ones, then they're at an impressionable stage where you can influence them such that they can discern at that early stage and know the consequences of wrong action. And then be able to make informed decisions about their future. So it's the way to go, for the commission, for the NDDC, by targeting young persons, especially at this point in time. And I wish, that it could also go beyond the Niger Delta region, because we can see the consequences of the abuse of illicit substances is staring us right in the face. In the northern part of the country, we can see the consequences in insurgency, in banditry, in the heinous crimes that are committed by these bandits and insurgents. Most of these crimes cannot have been committed without the use, without those people being under the influence of, hard drugs. We can see in some of the interviews, though, frowned at in recent times, how they talk about those crimes that they committed without any form of conscience. But when we take that campaign also to the youths, to the young persons in the northern region, perhaps we can record some successes in checking crimes, because then those crimes would have been nipped in the bud, at that early stage. So let's take that campaign as well to the northern part of the region, to the colleges, to the high schools in the northern part of the region. Malpe.
Well, Buki, very well said. I believe you mean in the northern region. But, the thing is, while the campaign is good in schools, I think that majority, or maybe the problem might most likely be more prevalent outside the schools. I mean, if you're taking the fact that we have a lot of out-of-school children, how do we begin to take that figure into account? But let's focus on the Niger Delta and what the NDDC is trying to do there. As you rightly pointed out, the NDDC is leaving its core mandate of providing infrastructure and also looking at welfare, which is a good thing. However, for me, there are deeper issues. You do know one of the reasons why the NDDC was started was to bring development to the Niger Delta region. We've seen a lot of activism in that region. Sadly, those who tried to be civil about their activism didn't make much impact, or they did make an impact, but it seemed that government was not willing to listen to people who were civil about how they agitated. Talk about Ken Saro-Wiwa and the Ogoni Nine, who were condemned to death and murdered under a military junta. That is on the one hand. And much later, we saw how the activism grew and, got out of hand and became militancy. And that was when government began to listen, when pipelines were vandalized, when, crude oil shipments abroad and foreign exchange earnings were impacted severely. It will seem that that's when government began to listen. And then we saw how militancy was born in the Niger Delta. And that was when they got the attention that they deserved. And, we saw what happened much later. There was, protracted war against the state from the militants, and then later on the amnesty program. And then we now saw new millionaires in the Niger Delta region as a result of, what had come from militancy. Now, don't forget that the militants were not exactly good boys. They didn't go there to speak English. They understood what the government wanted to. Well, they were able to successfully draw the attention of the government through their activities. And some of their methods were not the most, palatable methods. In terms of the kinds of things that they inculcated in the youths, in terms of, there have been instances of cultism, there have been instances of drug abuse, etc., etc., etc. But we saw eventually that this seemed to have yielded dividends for these young people. And if these are the models that people now have within the Niger Delta, because there must be viable models to ensure that when people, finally make their way to wealth, when you don't forget that younger people are watching them, and, if they see that this is the way that, these people have finally made wealth by going through the path of militancy and then eventually they make money, the fact is that many more young people will think that that might be a very viable way. So whilst it is important that, government begins its campaign of, drug abuse is not good, etc., etc., there also must be, prime example made of those, who do the wrong things to get, how do I put it now, who go down the wrong path. The Niger Delta program has gone on well, and thanks be to God for that. But there needs to be a clearer or a cleaner path. And I think they're trying to do that now by training, making sure that there are opportunities for many more young people to achieve a path to success, not through militancy this time, but perhaps through the path of education. This path must be made clear for these young ones, that if you do go to school, if you come out with very good results, this is what awaits you at the end. If you get you'll be able to get a job, etc., etc. That path must be made clear. Otherwise, if young people think that this is the way to go, if, militancy, cultism, that path will continue to look attractive to them. So government itself must also look for how to change methods so that when people are agitating or they're dissatisfied and they're speaking English, like you and I speak every morning, as they say, don't go to Renchi, there must be a way through by which, these agitations, these complaints are taken on board and are addressed before they get violent or before people begin to resort to other paths. This is, for me, a finer example. It's a good thing that the NDDC is in existence. I believe it will continue to be for a while. But as I said, while they're speaking to young people, they must ensure that within that society, there are very prime examples of people who did not resort to drug or violence or cultism or militancy, who have made a very clear path of success in that particular arena, these people must be held up as prime examples for what young people should be looking at.
And there are quite a number of them,
Bukola
indeed.
Anayo.
Yeah, there are quite a number of people, especially in the entertainment space, who have done that, who are still doing that even as we speak. Also glad to know that this is not the first of such interventions by the NDDC, one held in Akwa Ibom not too long ago. But perhaps it's in the enlightened self-interest of the NDDC to ensure that this is done, because when the infrastructure is put in place, someone has to protect it. Someone who is on drugs would rather destroy, don't you think? But then, I guess we'll wait. And those issues that Maokwe has raised, let's hope that they are taken as seriously. Let's flip to the papers now, see what the dailies are also saying this morning. Our first pick this morning is This Nigeria newspaper. Hey, we just spoke about an agency of government. Well, there's been an invasion, and that's what's on the front page of This Nigeria newspaper. MDAs invade Senate over 1.9 trillion naira service-wide vote probe. As Public Accounts Committee asks Finance Ministry to provide documents on missing 113 million naira JAM salary. Exactly what does that mean? Wait, when was the last time we had a headline on the front page of any of the papers that didn't have money?
You know, I don't know what it is with JAM. They always have a case of missing money. Well, perhaps this time we should be glad that no animal is swallowing up this sum this time. So perhaps there's hope that this can be found.
Well, the Public Accounts Committee is asking the Finance Ministry to provide documents on missing. It's the document they are asking for now, not the money.
Not the money.
So let's see. The story is on page 4.
No. Documents on missing 113 million naira JAM salary.
Documents on the missing money.
Yes, the money is missing.
Well, so they say the money is missing. So let's see if there is proof that, okay, maybe it's missing, maybe it's not. But that's the lead story of This Nigeria today. And of course, right under the picture on the front page, it's politics. Tinubu Atiku woo electorate in Kaduna Jos as Obi takes campaign to Kogi. That it's definitely not letting. Stories on page 12 of This Nigeria today. Several others, but you choose your pick.
Talking about picks, let's turn our attention to Daily Trust newspaper this morning. Daily Trust newspaper leads with, what we've been pretty much talking about since the start of the week. And this is the way it's rendered. Election spending. Politicians move to bypass cash withdrawal limit. And the riders go this way. Chieftains collect agents' account details in Nasarawa. Presidential candidates to spend 1.8 billion naira on agents each. 1.8 billion naira, that's the sum. APC mum as PDP LP kick. It won't affect our campaigns. NNPP, PRP, and policy will force a change. That's ascribed to an activist.
Presidential campaigns to spend 1.8 billion naira on agents each. Who? Each agent or each presidential candidate?
Each presidential candidate, but there's an each there.
Yeah. That each is probable.
Either way, there's an each. It's worth looking into, it's worth reading, and it's worth investigating, especially by the commission, which is supposed to look into the spending limits of political parties and of security agents, particularly because of this, gnawing concern about vote buying. Is this some form of vote buying? Well, questions should be asked. But if you're interested in this story, you'll find details on page 3 of the Daily Trust newspaper. A few more stories. Have you collected your PVC, by the way? This one is captioned this way: Southeast PVC's collection in slow start amid rising insecurity. Well, the distribution of PVCs has started, and it will continue into the first week of January 2023. Less than 90 days now, perhaps 80-something days to the election. So go get your PVC and make it count. And the security agents must ensure, that this is done under the most peaceful atmosphere where voters will be safe, to go get their PVCs. Let's leave it there now for Daily Trust newspaper.
Well, leadership has this on the front page for you. 2023, Atiku, Tinubu, Obi unveil economic security packages. I'll eliminate kidnappers, killers troubling Nigeria. That's from Asiwaju. PDP candidate promises to fix bad roads, revive Kura power plant in Plateau. Federal government slams Atiku over comment on Boko Haram's existence. We will save Nigeria from collapse, Labour Party flag bearer vows. So it's all about the campaigns right now. Page 4 is where you'll find details. Missing in parenthesis there, 89 trillion naira stamp duty can clear Nigeria's local foreign debts. That's according to the presidency. The question is, how is the money missing? You know, there's been talk around how 89 billion or 89 trillion naira collected in stamp duty is nowhere to be found, but or cannot be accounted for. Page 31 is where you get details, just in case you are wondering what that story is about. Look at this scorecard. Nigeria now supplies 8,000 megawatts of electricity. That's attributed to the minister. To whom are they doing the supply? Is that to Nigeria or to Nigeria and its neighboring countries? Just in case you're curious, as I am, flip to page 24. INEC rules burning of offices, apathy to PVC collection. But there needs to be plenty of awareness on this PVC collection, PVC collection mandate, so to speak, because people have taken pains to register. Why wouldn't they want to collect their PVCs? There's a big question there. Let's leave it there for leadership newspapers.
And flip to the Guardian newspaper this morning, which is also interested in the issue of PVC. But it's with a warning coming from INEC. Look at it. 2023, you'll be disappointed. INEC forewarns PVC buying politicians. Actually, I don't know. I'm not even going to try. Look at the writers. Caution supporters against baseless conspiracy theories. Insists polls will be one genuine voter, one vote. No PVC, no voting. Rigging will be impossible in 2023 general elections, says AIG. Committee on Election Security assures of credible polls in Kano. All of that packed on the front page of the paper this morning. And just in case you're wondering what's been going on with electricity, right under the nameplate, the first of those four, why core investors, management of discos were sacked by FG. Yeah, the story is on page, beg your pardon, story is on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper this morning.
And it's news that, Nigeria is now generating 8,000 megawatts of electricity, as highlighted by Malpa from the Leadership newspaper this morning. We'd like to know what you think. Is that your experience, in any part of Nigeria that you're watching from? Have you experienced an increased supply in electricity, and in line with what you're paying for it? Let us know. I'm interested in that.
Oh, yeah. It'll be good to know how that is, because, those in especially rural areas, my concern has always been for the small business who use all kinds of means, ways, and whatever to get electricity supply for their businesses. I want to know how they fare, because we questioned Mr. Laoluakani yesterday about 1.9 million small businesses collapsing over the space of 2 years. When we talk about harsh business economic environments,
conditions,
electricity is definitely one of them.
Absolutely.
That's the Guardian newspaper today.
And from Guardian newspaper, let's now look at Nigerian News Direct. And it has a potpourri of stories on the front page this morning, and some of them will definitely interest you. But let's look at the big story, which also has to do with electricity. $2 billion electricity grid maintenance creates 45,000 jobs. That's ascribed to the minister. Well, we'll have to find out which of the ministers this is. Is it the Minister of Power or the Minister of State? It's a page 17 read. But 45,000 jobs is, not a small fry. It should have significant impact on the economy. Is this projected, or is this what has been implemented and the results can be seen? If the results can be seen, where are the results?
We speak English. So let's look at the English in that headline. Okay. Creates sounds like present tense or present continuous. So let's say that is it. But then, just as you said, the impact of that, grid maintenance. We've been talking about TAM, turnaround maintenance, for years, and what exactly has been turned around? We've been talking about turnaround maintenance for the refineries for donkey years. What exactly has been turned around? Yes, it is good to know that at least the grid collapses have invoked this need for the government to spend.
Thank you for the reminder. According to the federal government, the Port Harcourt refinery is supposed to be up and running by December this year.
Well, this is December.
This is December.
Good. So
yeah.
Someone should be asking questions
around that as well.
I can see some reporter picking up his phone now and calling, hey, what's going on? Anyway, back to the story. So $2 billion to maintain electricity grid in order for us to have no more grid collapses may be a good thing. Job creation, certainly. But what's the ROI? That's what Nigerians are definitely interested in.
Well, grid maintenance is what has led the Nigerian News Direct this morning. Let's take a look at another story. EFCC auctions over 190 vehicles in Abuja, Ibadan, Port Harcourt, Benin, others. And I'm sure you saw that report yesterday on Channels News at 10. It compels attention to the extent that you wonder, where all of that money is coming from. If Nigerians are complaining about, the harsh economic conditions, and vehicles are being purchased for as high as 8 million naira from, that report that we saw yesterday. And it was such a crowd as well of those who wanted to buy the vehicles.
It's an auction.
Yeah.
That 8 million naira purchase could well be worth something in the region of 20, maybe 30 million.
But 8 million naira, all the same, is a lot of money. It's a life-changing sum for some.
8 million naira would be chicken change for some. If someone could make such a purchase at that time, and then the version of the year model
of manufacture,
the year of manufacture, the model of the car and everything, all of those things will come into play. But hey, are you asking the EFCC to probe those who are buying?
Not probe.
I'm just asking.
Not probes. Some people need vehicles as cheap as 500,000 naira right now, but some are buying for 8 million naira. It's worth talking about. 1,000 people for just 30-something vehicles.
I'll be very, very wary to buy a 500,000 naira car, because what you spend to maintain
not you.
it.
No.
I'm just,
not
anyone
you,
should be. Come on.
All right. Lastly, we have this one also from the front page of the the Nigerian News Direct. Why we're probing bid to concession Zungeru power plant. That's ascribed to the Senate President, and it's a page, this is blurred now. You'll find it inside the Nigerian News Direct. Let's leave it there for the Nigerian News Direct this morning.
A number of stories are making the rounds on the front page of the Vanguard newspapers this morning. The lead story is petrol. Yes, it's still about petrol. This problem still hasn't been solved. NNPC slashes price for marketers to ease scarcity. Oil marketers promise compliance and scarcity in 1 week. That's according to reps. A marketers set up committee to track product delivery, demands 60% of daily product allocation, sign agreements with federal government to ensure availability of product. So page 5 is where you'll find all of the stories. Attacks at INEC offices, IPOB distances self, blames federal government. Hitches, low turnout, mar collection of PVCs. Fear of attacks scare people in Imo. Impressive turnout in Kaduna, Plateau, Kano, Taraba, others. Page 36 is where you'll find details there. And look at the story again about the stamp duty funds. NIPOST cartel colluded to embezzle stamp duty funds. That's according to the presidency. I want to believe that this cartel, they're human beings that make them up. And if they're Nigerian human beings and no Nigerian is above the law, as long as they're not governors, they do not have immunity or occupying any executive position. You know, I'm sure that these human beings, well, when I mean executive positions with immunity, because I think they're very, very specific. There needs to be a probe, a deeper probe into who the members of this cartel are and how they managed to embezzle the amount of money that we're hearing was embezzled or is missing or is unaccounted for, you know, in this stamp duty fund brouhaha. So you might want to look at that story on page 8 of the paper. Just let me quickly run through a New Telegraph for you as well. They have something similar to that of the Vanguard newspapers, still focusing largely on the matter of petrol. PMS crisis. Reps give NNPCL 1 week to end fuel scarcity. Insists crisis artificial. Mandate Regulatory Commission to collaborate with police, DSS to ensure product is sold at regulated price. Nigerian ports take delivery of 139 billion naira product. So that is also there on the front page of New Telegraph for you. APC raises the alarm over incessant attacks on members. That is there on the front page as Tinubu promises to end insecurity, boost food security, food sufficiency in Kaduna. 2023, I have no personal problem with Atiku. That's according to Wike, except demand by southern stakeholders that Ayu relinquishes his position. Says no regret contesting presidency, happy to make Rivers State proud. And that's where we'll take, should we leave it there? One more. CBN, 5 banks account for 37.73 trillion naira industry's total assets. Find out who the banks are, page 3 of the paper. We leave it there for New Telegraph newspapers. So wraps up our look at the newspaper headlines this morning. I hope that we've been able to excite you to at least pick up a daily to see the details of some of the headlines that we've looked at here.
The Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, southwest Nigeria, is a major gateway to other parts of the country. Over the last 8 months, attention has been drawn to the incessant attacks, particularly kidnapping activities on the 127-kilometer stretch. The Deputy Inspector General of Police, Force Criminal Investigations Department and coordinator of the Southwest Zone is here on a mission to assess and monitor the deployment of personnel on the black spots. From Shagamu interchange end, the convoy moves to Alapako, Ajogolo, Ogumaki, Ajebo and Onigari.
Bush has actually grown on the verge of the express road, and this, of course, has made visibility so poor. And this, of course, has been serving more of a criminal hideout for the criminal elements making incursion from inside the bush onto the road to kidnap and return back into the bush. So it is very, very important, very key that we work to get the bush on the verge of the road removed, so to assist in visibility, 1, and 2, to also prevent these criminal elements from making incursion from inside the bush onto the road to kidnap and return without challenge.
Drawing from his wealth of experience, Mr. Babatunde Kokumo proposes the construction of static points for personnel deployed to the axis.
We will increase police visibility to ensure that we have more points on the road. We are going to establish static points, more static points on the road, and of course, increase the patrol teams along the road. This, of course, is intended to reassure members of the public that we have the capacity to provide adequate security for lives and property on this stretch of Lagos-Ibadan Express Road.
With this latest action by the police, residents of communities along this corridor, as well as motorists who ply this route, said to be the busiest in the country, may now carry on with their daily businesses without fear of being attacked.
Indeed, the words of the Cardinal are quite apt there, that the state of insecurity in the country is making every aspect of our national life problematic. And worst of all is that it appears that the state has no solution to the problem. But we cannot throw up our hands in the air. We have to ask those who seem quite eager, who have offered themselves to govern us. We have to ask hard questions of them as to what they intend to do with the different security problems plaguing different parts of the country. In the northern parts of the country, you have problems with banditry, what is largely referred to as banditry, terrorism, kidnapping, and all manners of problems. In the southern parts of the country, depending on where you look, you'll also have problems of kidnapping, farmer herders clashes, or what has been tagged farmer herders clashes, which encompasses quite, you know, a huge, will I say, plethora of problems. In the southeast, you also have the problem created by, depending on how you look at it. But right now, IPOB and ESN seem to be giving the federal government a big headache, and not just the federal government, also the state governments of some of the states affected, you know, and giving them a headache on how to deal with some of the issues that they're currently facing. So how do the different political parties that are offering themselves, you know, asking us to vote for them in the coming elections, how do they intend to face the security problem? Have they been able to decipher what the issues really are, and what do they intend to do differently about it to bring better results? This morning, I'm being joined by Zubair Abdurauf Idris. He's a senior counselor of the Birnin Gwari Emirate. He holds the title of Damansanin Birnin Gwari. Well, he is not a member of any political party, but if you do know Birnin Gwari in Kaduna State, he's been plagued by very many security challenges, and only a journey to Birnin Gwari is not for the faint of heart. So we need to ask him some questions as to what precisely needs to be done to save Birnin Gwari and bring it back fully into the Nigerian state. And we also have with us this morning Mr. Ahmad Sajo, who is a member, Public Affairs Committee of the Presidential Campaign Council of the APC. Well, we have these two gentlemen for now. We might be joined by other members of other political parties, perhaps while the conversation is going on. But these are the people that we have, and we'll start the conversation. So let me ask you, for someone like you whose emirate, whose council has experienced the sort of crisis that we have seen, a lot of people cannot, I mean, when the very mention of Beningwari elicits fear from them, what precisely do you think needs to be done to ensure that people can freely go to Beningwari and, you know, and people from Beningwari can fully come out? The people of Beningwari who have been experiencing, you know, living a different type of life, let's say, I don't want to say under a different type of government, because that might be giving the bandits too much authority. But it's a reality that generally it was seen that there's a different authority, different from that of the Nigerian state in Beningwari. Is that correct?
Well, when you talk of different, you know, government, well, we have government within the government. There are some areas within Beningwari Emirate that particularly the eastern part of Beningwari, whereby the Ansaru, they are the one who are administering some of this territory because they give directives to the citizens who are there, and they decide what to be done. And at times, people also, the locals there, they don't have any option, but they have to take some of their issues for adjudication to all these terrorists. One is because the absence of some of these institutions of government that would normally take care of the people there. Because even the issue of education, when you look at most of the schools in that area, were deserted because they have issued a decree that nobody should go to any you know, school or any form of formal education. And also,
so there is essentially a government not recognized, yes, by the government. Yeah. I just want to confirm, because when we say that you're a councillor at the Beningwari Emirate, yeah, are you also a part of the Ansaru, or you're part of which government? What layer of government would that be?
You see, the only authority recognized by the Constitution is the authority of the local government, which is the third tier of government. Mm-hmm. And also, when you have the traditional institution is headed by the emir, and he has his council members, in which we, some of the council members who are the traditional title holders, we are the councillors, mm-hmm, who normally you know, give advices, you know, to the emir, and also to look at what is happening in the emirate, and also give whatever necessary support for the betterment of the society. So that's what we normally do. But if you look at what is happening in some areas, particularly, you know, the eastern part, particularly 3, you know, ward of Kazage, that is Damari area, and Old Kuyelo, and in some part of a place called Kutemeshi, which is very close to Giwa, local government area of Kaduna State. So you can see that there are presence of Ansaru there. So this Ansaru, you understand, although there are some efforts in which after, you know, the new GOC, General Lagbaja, which he tried to open up some areas that are considered a no-go area or no-go zone. You understand some of the successes recorded by the GOC and his men has made people, you know, to be able to come back to life. But the problem is, as soon as, you know, he opened, you know, some areas that are, you know, in a very difficult, bad stage, then these terrorists open new frontiers and they go into the hinterland and also try to make, the locals' life miserable. For instance, in some of these areas, some of these terrorists, whether you harvest or you didn't harvest, whether you paid money, before you even commence, the farming season, you understand? They will just, go to your farm, whatever, and they will give it to their cattle. And sometimes they will tell you, like, most farmers, the harvest of the cowpea was not done in some of these areas. You will see them pushing their cows into these farms, then the farmers cannot access those farms, and all those cattle, they will eat up everything.
So what I'm curious to know is that this Ansaro, they coexist also with the local authorities. So the Emirate is aware that they're there, and even, I don't know, how does it work?
No, you see, when you say the Emirate is aware, because, this is something that happened over 12 to 15 years ago. Gradually, these people started coming, as evangelists, who are teaching people, Islam. And people they are not aware that these people have a parochial, interest, or they have a motive that they want to now indoctrinate the society. So gradually, they started, manifesting some element of an element of this of their own doctrine into the society. So that's how it grows. So there's nothing one can do. And sometimes they even sack some of, the local chiefs there. You understand? And they said they are the one in charge. So you see, if you look at Birnungwari if you look at Birnungwari generally, you see that Birnungwari is an area that that is so vast that you see that has a lot of difficult terrain. In some areas you cannot go in those areas because of the mountainous areas of that place, and some places you can see that because of the adjoining forest through Zampara and other places. So that is why you cannot be able to see how best you can be able to reach out to where these people are. Before Birnungwari to Puntua Road is accessible to people.
We'll come to the issue of forests later, because interestingly, the presidential candidate of the PDP, said he doesn't understand when people talk about forests. He talked about being in his jet and how, when he is in a jet, maybe 30 miles into the air, or 30 feet, he can see the ground and it is shrubs. And, and he said people talk about Sambisa forest. Perhaps our producers will have that particular video on cue and we can listen to what it is that he actually said. But let me come to you, Mr. Sajo. You are no stranger to the issue of terrorism. You were Commissioner for Information in Adamawa State, and Adamawa did witness, was one of the 3 states in the Northeast that witnessed terrorism at its peak. Now you are now a member of the Presidential Campaign Council, and this is one of the problems that we're still facing, maybe not in Adamawa, but at least in Borno, it's still a problem. We've seen it spread to many other parts of the northwest of the country. Yesterday, we understand that your candidate, the presidential candidate of your party, visited Birnungwari before he went to the stadium to have his rally in Kaduna yesterday. So, can you tell us more precisely, when you listen to this sort of problem, what is the unique thing that your presidential candidate wants to bring on board that the APC has not already tried within the 7.5 years that it's been in power?
Yeah, thank you very much, my dear sister. It's been a long time we met, and I'm glad we're meeting. Let me first start by telling you that when you listen to him, he is not just talking about fiscal insecurity. There is the food insecurity component of it. There's the economic insecurity component of it. The whole thing is becoming, but from what his narration now, you can see that there's a connect. The insurgency and the banditry are almost becoming one and the same thing. Now, yes, like you said, the Jagaban Borgu, the presidential candidate of APC, went to Birnin Gwari, and the Council of Birnin Gwari Emirate, conferred the title of Dakar and Birnin Gwari on him, which, in other words, means the strongest local warrior within the setup. But the important thing in it is that first, we must learn. This thing has to be based on knowledge, and that is what the APC manifesto is talking about. That over the years that this thing is happening, what have we learned from it? He has just given you one lesson, which the APC is studying very deeply now. That these people sometimes they come looking innocent Islamic evangelists, but eventually they expose certain doctrines that become the security threat that we're facing. Then again, when non-state actors take up arms against the state has some limited options. You can't go full kinetic. You have to go non-kinetic and kinetic. But even if you want to go full kinetic, sometimes they use human shields. They don't have rules of engagement. You have rules of engagement. Eyes are on you. So what we are trying to do now is that the fight against banditry, insurgency, which to me are almost the same thing presently under the circumstances. Ansaru are not bandits; they are insurgents. The best approach, first and foremost, is to intensify our intelligence gathering capacity. Whether they're in the forest, whether they're in the community, whether they're in the townships, what is the level of intelligence we are able to gather about them? How do they operate? What are the layers? What are the structures? What is their firepower? Because we are talking about firepower. You cannot confront an enemy whose firepower you don't know. So what the APC manifesto is talking about is a combination of the kinetic and the non-kinetic approach to fighting these bandit and insurgents. What the APC manifesto is talking about is, look, while we have troops and other security personnel on ground to go all out after these people, we must intensify our intelligence gathering. We must intensify our surveillance, both aerial surveillance and land surveillance. We must intensify, knowledge and based understanding of their mode of operation. You cannot route people out unless you understand the way they operate.
That is not anything new, because your party has been at this now for the last 7.5 years.
Yeah, and
in fact, as a matter of, will I say what it is that the candidate of the PDP is proposing, is that he thinks that what has been lacking is leadership and governance and inclusiveness in terms of how this battle has been fought. He thinks that if more leadership is provided, more inclusiveness is provided, then perhaps you might be able to make headway, because that would seem to be the fundamental difference from what he proposes, from what your own party is also looking at.
No, leadership, yes, there's a leadership that has moved. I come from Adamawa State. As at 2015, I do remember that Adamawa was one of the 3 states that they used to call the Bay States: Borno, Yobe, Adamawa. Part of our lands were occupied by Boko Haram. Flags were flying in some local government and the rest. But this approach, intelligence gathering, moving with troops against the insurgents. I remember very well, I used to wear UN jacket and accompany the troops to the war front. We fought them out. Then we also use intelligence and knowledge base to study particularly the procedures they adopt before carrying out suicide bombing, because one of our greatest challenges then was suicide bombing within the cities. We were able to cope all of that. So it's leadership, yes. We're making some gains. You just mentioned about a new GOC changing the nature of the game. We're moving. The thing is, we need to study what has been done before. How did we recover lands in Borno, Yobe, Adamawa? Today, there is no part of Yobe that I know that is under the flag of Boko Haram. No part of Adamawa that is under the flag of Boko Haram. How was that achieved? How did we get rid of these kind of things? Then, the forests are an impediment. Sometimes they go into the forest.
I hope that our producer would be able to get that track of the presidential candidate of the PDP when he was talking about forests. He actually doubts the existence of any forest. He said there is a place they even call Zambisa Forest, and he doesn't understand what sort of forest exists that people cannot be seen when they're camping in those forests. But let me throw this conversation to Lagos, because I understand my colleagues have questions for you.
Well, thank you, Mokwe. The first of our questions, of course, will go to the gentleman you spoke with earlier, Mr. Idris. How concerned are you? Because, at the end of the day, no progress can be made significantly or sustainably if security is not assured. So the issues that you have raised, and of course, which Mr. Sajo buttressed by saying that it included food insecurity, economic insecurity, and all of those things, how concerned are you of the impact these levels of insecurity may have on people coming out to perform their civic duty of voting in the year ahead?
Well, that's the most difficult situation. If you look at what is happening, the build-up to 2023 elections, most of the politicians, are, crisscrossing the part of the country, trying to see how they can woo all these voters to vote them into power. But one thing is, the issue of security is something that is paramount, that without security, even the elections cannot hold. So if you look at some of these areas where this insecurity has become the order of the day, if you look at all those areas, there are some areas that I don't think that even the National Electoral Body can be able to deploy it, some of their personnel into these areas because of the risk involved in those areas. Therefore, there is something that, all the candidates of all these political parties, especially the presidential candidates, should have done. First of all, they shouldn't capitalize on seeking for votes of people to go to these areas in order, for them, to get the sympathy of those people. So if you look at some of these areas, they were being abandoned by, their respective governments. Abandoned in the sense that, in most of these areas, you hardly see when either a governor or a government official visit these areas where you have these issues of insecurity in the country. Let me give an example. I always give an example to the area I come from. Birnungwari, whether we like it or not, is the second epicenter of armed banditry, kidnapping, and terrorism when you take away Zamfara and probably Katsina State. So now, when last have you seen, we have been seeing the governor since after 2019 elections to either sympathize with us or to commensurate with the people of Birnungwari? Until recently, not quite 2-3 weeks ago, even the statement of what is happening of this insecurity, you haven't seen any, we are not seeing any statement that has to do with that. There was a time, twice, the convoy of the emir was attacked. No any, other press statement or anything from the government to commensurate with the people of Birnin Gwari and also the emir. And now, when it comes to getting the vote of the people, the governor, spearheaded, a move with the APC candidate and moved to Birnin Gwari. You understand? And therefore, we shouldn't use, politics or canvassing for votes to capitalize on the situation in which people are and also to canvass, for political gain. And I think once we remove, this issue of capitalizing on the situation in which people are, particularly this issue of insecurity, to be able to get votes that nobody will see these politicians after they have, get elected, and also and also after getting elected, and they will remain adamant and what have you. Okay. So the issue here is this: as Sanjo says, we have to look at the issue of what is the problem, what has the previous government do, you understand, as we are going towards the 2023 elections. What are we going to do differently? This is only when you now set an agenda for security and look at all those issues. Where there are successes, how do we now improve on these successes? Okay. Well, where Mr. there Idris, are problems that we couldn't achieve much, how do we now, improve and also make that kind of successes? And I think these are some of the issues that the politicians will look at and Mr. also Idris, to be able to make life
easy for the people, yes. But perhaps it will also speak to exactly what role the people have played, can play, or will play in the scheme of things, because security consultants tell us all the time, all security or insecurity is local. What can the people do, and a lot more when we return from this break?
Why we should have Boko Haram. You see, I served in Borno State when it was the Northeast. And as a custom officer, I was patrolling the entire Northeast. So I'm very, very conversant with the vegetation and with the border areas. I still cannot find a place in the Borno area where anybody can hide and cannot be seen. I cannot understand, honestly, the Boko Haram phenomenon. Sometimes when returning from Europe, 30 feet above, I could see a man walking in Borno State. So where is the place to hide? To the extent that they said there is a place called Zambisa. I've been there. I didn't see a forest. It's just shrubs here and there. So, and we have deployed the Nigerian military, which used to be the best, one of the best in the world. They have fought, a number of international arena, and they have excelled. And here we are deploying the Nigerian military with its might and everything, and we just couldn't, eliminate Boko Haram.
Thank you for staying with us. Well, Mr. Sajo, Marco was calling for that track. Well, there it is from the candidate of... the question is for Mr. Sajo, not Mr. Idris. So quickly respond to what you heard him say about the fact that there is no such thing as Sambisa forest, but maybe Sambisa area, but not such a thing as a forest that cannot be infiltrated so easily. How do you respond?
This is, well, let me look at it this way. I am not in any way trying to say things that would be bad against the PDP presidential candidate, but I know for certain that not just that there is a Sambisa forest, but Sambisa forest is a gazetted game reserve or national park, and it's gazetted and coded in the National Archives. It does exist. It's a very thick forest. At least before now, I did some media work with Gashaka Gumti National Park, Old Oyo National Park, Kayenji Lake National Park, and Sambisa National Park. So I know the terrain, I know the forest, I know the thickness of the forest. And like I said, we should be very careful playing politics with insecurity. We're dealing with non-state actors that have taken arms against the state. We're dealing with non-state actors that do not have follow any rule of engagement. We're dealing with non-state actors that are capable of using innocent civilians as human shield if they come under attack. We're dealing with a situation where we need a lot of knowledge-based approach to addressing the issues and the situations. We're dealing with a situation that requires that we approach it in a manner that is both kinetic and non-kinetic. We're dealing with a situation where we need to restore confidence of governance in the people so that we can partner the people in routing out criminals, sundry criminals, whether they are bandits, whether they are insurgents, whether they are Ansaru or Boko Haram or anybody. We're dealing with a situation where self-denial of the existence of the problem does not in any way solve the problem. Like I said, it's a compounded problem. It's a problem of insecurity, fiscal insecurity on the people, but it's also a problem that may degenerate into food insecurity, that it's a situation that denies people the right to go for their businesses, markets, village markets, and the rest, which will affect economic insecurity or create economic insecurity. We're dealing with a multifaceted situation. So we should not wish it away by saying we sit in our planes and see people moving in the forest. I don't own a private jet, but at least I have flown even with the Air Force in their helicopters, which is very, very low. And I have seen that to tell me that you can see them from a jet, I find it a little bit hard to agree. But then, if he says so, he says so. But I am saying we need to put a lot more, seriousness in looking at this security situation. This security situation has come a long, long way. We're still dealing with it, and it is spreading. It's democratizing itself from the corner of Nigeria in the northeast. It's spreading northwest, southwest, southeast, and all over the country. And I think it requires more serious approach to address it. We need to also appreciate the roles of our men and women in arms. Some of them get killed. They are not killed by ghosts. They are killed by human beings who have taken up arms against the state. They have gone into this forest. Some of them have been ambushed in this forest. They've been killed. It will be a serious disservice. It will be a serious lack of empathy for us to begin to say that those forests don't exist. These happenings are not happening, that these people did not take off arms, are not hiding, they're not using innocent civilians as human shields. I think we need to rethink all of this so that we can address this insecurity. Like my brother here said, for as long as we do not address this insecurity, we will not be able to hold the elections as we want it to be. And if for any reason insecurity reduces voter turnout, we may have a democracy, but the democracy may not give us the kind of choices that we would have requested if everybody had a chance to go out and vote. So we must address insecurity so that we can get our politics also right, and we can get our economy right, and we can get lives and livelihoods right.
Yeah.
What I expect from all of us that are participating in this political era, whether you are in APC, PDP, or any other party, is to begin to look at durable solutions to this crisis that we have found ourselves
indeed,
in.
Mr. Sajo.
And denial of the existence of the crisis or the existence of the magnitude of the crisis cannot in any way solve the problem.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Sajo. Thank you for being categorical in your reaction to the positioning of the PDP presidential candidate on the presence or absence of forests in the northwestern part and northeastern part of the country. I would like to return to you, particularly on your commentary about how we should study it more. But let me now come to Mr. Abdurrauf Idris. I recall the last time you were on the program when you pretty much intimated us about the presence of Ansaru in the in Bereningwari, and how I recall how you shared with us how the locals, how the Ansaru insurgents have earned the trust of the locals because they provide security that the government of the day has not been able to provide for them. But going forward now, Mr. Idris, you talked about how Ansaru has been present and it developed over the decade. I'd like you to let us know if this is related to a lack of education in any way, and how it can be, tackled from the root if it is related to lack of education, because the insurgency in the northeast has also been, attributed to the presence of Al-Majiri to an extent. Indeed, the Shekau who was killed in battle has also been identified to be an Al-Majiri himself when he was growing up. So is it related to to lack of education? What is the positioning in relation to that? What is the positioning of Ansaru? What is their own ideological conviction?
Well, the ideological conviction of Ansaru is not different from the one of Boko Haram, because the Ansaru are a splinter group of Boko Haram. And whatever you see Ansaru are doing, they are doing it, in consonant with whatever Boko Haram are doing. But only that, the modus operandi of the two groups, differs. One are a little bit, somehow lenient in their approach, but the other ones, they are so cruel in whatever they are doing. You see, the locals, doesn't have an alternative. Bad governance, increases the issues of insecurity. And also, when poverty is there on the people, poverty make people to be uneducated, and also they cannot be able to see whatever that is going on. So whatever you see, because of the poverty and also the bad governance, because nobody cares about, the lives of those people. And besides, when you look at the economic, benefit of all this insecurity, first of all, the locals there, because all these people, either Ansaru or these terrorists or bandits, as they may be called, you understand there are some benefit in which, the locals also have. So unless or until it is not government alone that will be able to take care of all this issue of insecurity, the society also should rise up and fish out, the bad ones among them. If you look at all these people, they live in this forest. So I believe, this forest exists. No matter whatever somebody is saying, that this forest exists. And these people are right there. And who now supply some of these consumables to them? Who supply food items to them? It is people who are locals there. And in fact, when they are doing the cattle rustling, who normally go there and take all these cattle and take them to the market and sell? It is the locals who do that. Unless or until we identify these kind of things, we won't be able, to address the problem. It is not government alone, but also the society also should rise up. But you see, the problem of bad governance is the cause of this insecurity. Once you have a government that abandoned its people, then the people will become helpless. And that is why when this Ansaru came and they offer help to the locals in our area, it's because they don't have alternative. Because those that are supposed to protect them are not protecting them. If you look at all those areas until recently where you have deployment, in the whole of eastern part of Birnungwari, there were no security. When you now say the number of police that are there are not that much. But now we have, some detachment of the military and also the police in those areas. But most of these areas, they cannot do anything tangible because these people, they have already infiltrated the society. So therefore, it is not the question of Almajiri system or whatever, but it is the question of lack of coordination of how people can organize themselves and also to make sure that they are not indoctrinated with alien type of religious obligations that Ansaru are bringing. So these are the situations that we need to look at them.
If you say,
and also we take
Mr.
a
Idris,
multifaceted approach so that, together, the people, the society, the government, and the security agents will be able to tame this insecurity in the country.
So, Mr. Idris, if you say that it's not a product of the Al-Majri system, are these people, are they young people? Are they predominantly educated? What's the motivation for joining Ansaru and becoming a member?
Yeah, you see, these people are being cajoled because of the experience they have. You see, first of all, they have their cattle confiscated, their farms, whatever they do in their farms, they have to pay all sorts of levies to the bandits or the terrorists. So at the end of it all, during the harvest, they pay for the harvest. At the end of it all, after even harvesting, they now have a ratio of, for every 10 bags, they give 2 bags to all these bandits, and while they take 8 away. So when the Ansaru offers help to these people, they don't have any other means of protecting themselves because they don't have the means to protect themselves. So they have seen Ansaru as the Messiah that will, eliminate these people who are capitalizing on the inadequacies of lack of protection from the government, which is the primary responsibility of the government to protect lives and property. So therefore, that is why they were able, to now take the offer from the Ansaru, and also some of the locals join this Ansaru because of poverty that is striking, those
Mr.
kind
Idris,
of people.
Perhaps you don't get my drift. I want us to understand the Ansaru. So I'm asking you to describe them, their demography. Are they young people? Are they predominantly uneducated? What is the attraction to becoming a member of Ansaru? That's what I'm trying to help us all understand.
Yeah, what I said, Ansaru is a splinter group of Boko Haram. They have an ideology to which they are antagonists of anything called government. And to them, Western education is forbidden in their own books, and that's their own ideology. And mostly these people, they are not old, they are young, and they always try to cajole young people within the locals so that they can join the group, teaching them, the reward in heaven and what have you, and also because they have money, so they give people money so that they take care of them. And even during festivities, they now distribute food items and what have you to the people, to the locals. So this is something that, they lack from, you understand, the government. So therefore, that is why these people, join the Ansaru. So mostly it's young people who join the Ansaru, as I said, because of the poverty that is striking the people and also the neglect and the bad governance, and that's why these people, join the Ansaru. So it's mostly young people who join this kind of ideology that also, entice them to all sorts of, favors, in the hereafter.
All right. Mr. Sajo, let me come to you now. Earlier, you talked about the need for us to understand, these young people, understand their modus operandi and how to tackle them. But it's taking your APC-led government 7.5 years to, study what's going on, not just in Birnin-Gwari, but in other parts of the north. So isn't it an indictment, so to speak, of the inability of your government to produce results that will lead to a meaningful end to insurgency or banditry, as the case may be in the Northeast? And the second part of this would be some of the solutions preferred in the manifesto of your party going forward in 2023 is an increase in the recruitment, of either the police and the military to check this. But would this be sufficient if we went by the root causes of these problems, as has been identified, partly in this program by Mr. Idris?
Thank you very much. I think there are three issues, or there are three components in this axis of evil mix. First and foremost, there is the heavy weaponization of poverty. If we do not address poverty, poverty will be weaponized by people in power and people who want power, and including bandits, insurgents, and everybody. So there's this weaponization of poverty, which we must address. We must address poverty at its root so as to stop people from weaponizing poverty. Secondly, we must appreciate the fact that out-of-school children, the more you have out-of-school children, the more you have a ready reservoir of recruits for whoever comes with an idea or ideology that is evil. So we must begin to address out-of-school children, which is part of the concerns of the APC presidential candidate and the presidential campaign. And then the third is abuse of intoxicating substances, drugs, and other substances that intoxicate. If we do not address these three issues very squarely, and that's what I mean by understanding some of the root causes. You continuously go, you think you can go kinetic, you think you can just unleash troops, unleash the Air Force with jets. If you are not lucky, you may end up with a heavier collateral damage than the bandits you want to kill. And I told you this, and I'm saying it again. I have practical experience on ground. I have accompanied troops to the age of Sambisa when I was in leadership in Adamawa State. I would tell you that these people use innocent civilians as human shield. So there's a limit to how much you can go. There are surveillance aircraft that go, in fact, some of them with heat detectors. They discover where there are concentration of people. But we have also witnessed quite a number of unfortunate circumstances where an IDP camp was bombed. We have witnessed that. Where a convoy of innocent people walking were bombed because there was some wrong intelligence or because the surveillance did not show. Because the forests are hiding some of these activities. And when these people move and they use human shields, it will be very difficult for you to go after them directly. So we must begin to first increase our level of intelligence gathering, increase our level of winning the hearts and minds of people to become partners in securing their communities. And then we must increase...
These solutions which you are proposing, they have been proposed before now. They were proposed way before 2015. Your party, put out parts of that as the solutions it was going to bring on board. The question is, what results have we seen? I think that's the key question.
And I told you that there is results. There are no Boko Haram flags flying in any part of Adamawa today. There is no Boko Haram flag flying in any part of Yobe today. And there are, appreciable part of Borno that have been recovered. There may be some still areas where there are crises, but there is appreciable part of Borno that is recovered. even the area around the Lake Chad Basin, you know, a lot of it had been recovered.
My colleague Buki asked you something about, you know, whether the first thing you said it wasn't an indictment, and it would seem that you were repeating the indictment when you talked about poverty and the level of poverty, and you said that those in power can weaponize poverty. Your party is currently in power. It has a duty to lift people out of poverty. The question is, has it weaponized poverty instead? Because you also said, oh, those who are also coming to get power can also weaponize poverty. If the party in power doesn't, you know, do something about lifting people out of poverty, then they have provided a room for those who are coming to grab it to weaponize it. You don't agree?
No. The APC has done quite a lot through the social investment program to reduce the level of poverty.
You saw
but
the latest,
there are issues.
Did you see the latest figures? 133 million Nigerians.
I have seen it, but it's not just APC. It is a global phenomenon. The poverty level in the world is a global phenomenon. It's not just an APC. First, there was the COVID. We're still suffering from the post-COVID virus within our societies. There is the ongoing crisis in Europe. All of these things are affecting the levels of poverty across the globe. And we are not in isolation.
We might not be living in isolation, but, you know,
Exactly.
for the people who know about, you know, what it is that we need to be doing, they actually think that this is the time when we ought to be living in abundance. I do not know, you know, if you want to say something.
How can we live in abundance?
I think
you know,
when you look at all those figures of 130 million people out of 200 million or more Nigerians that are living in abject poverty, 94 million of those figures of 130 million, they live in the rural communities. So you can see the vulnerability of all these people in the rural areas. And you can see how poverty can breed all sorts of criminality within the society. So I think, you see, the issue of, you know, the government of APC through whatever, you know, he's talking about, either, you know, the social investment or what have you. You see, there must be disconnect between the government program and also the actual issues at stake, particularly within the rural communities. And unless these issues are being addressed, where, you know, the implementation went wrong, unless, you know, those kind of programs are implemented, you know, so that it reach the target, you know, people, that is the rural communities, you won't be able, you know, to get out of poverty. We have to look for a model. Well agreed, it's a global issue. But we look at Nigeria that we are now. How do we now tackle all these issues that has to do with poverty?
I think that is the conversation that would need to continue after now, gentlemen. I have to thank you both for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. Our producers did try to get across to other reps from other political parties, but sadly they weren't able to show up this morning. It's the campaign season, and it does look like, you know, people are hopping from one state to the other. But we have to thank you, gentlemen, for coming on this morning. Zubair Abdurrauf Idris is the senior counselor of the Beningwari Emirate and holds the title of Damansanin Beningwari. Thank you so much for coming on. And Mr. Ahmad Sajo, member of the Public Affairs Committee of the Presidential Council, Presidential Campaign Council of the APC. Thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily as well.
Legends, familiar faces in the industry, those who have shaped media practice in the country are in the room.
On behalf of the patron and the steering committee,
it's a blend of different generations of broadcast journalists brought together by the Society of Nigerian Broadcasters, also known as SMB.
Out of the 4 that registered SMB in 1994, only 2
For
of
many
them
years
are
after
alive
the
today.
idea of the society was conceived, it never saw the light of day. But according to Dr. Yemisi Bangboshe, this induction means SMB has taken off officially.
What we are doing today is building on solid foundation laid by our progenitors. A functional SMB, however, will help in no small way to professionalize the practice of broadcasting, serve as the advocacy body for the practitioners, and bridge the gap between the old and new practitioners.
The veterans in the auditorium weighing on the critical issue of maintaining standards. They also provide answers to the question of who should regulate the broadcasting profession.
We should consider a situation in which regulation of the practice, regulation of the profession of broadcasting is in the hands of broadcasters themselves. That is called self-regulation by those who know what it is, what is the right thing to do. You're being regulated by a body that is not required to be competent in broadcasting, and that is acting on behalf of the powerful, whom you are supposed to hold to account. So there seems to be something wrong there.
The fact that we're going to establish an institute for training broadcasters, it becomes very essential that broadcasters are trained. It becomes very essential because it is important that when we have broadcasters, there is a way you have to judge broadcasters, somebody who is fit to be in that place and broadcasting.
The spectrum is overcrowded with too many radio and television stations. That nobody is thinking of viability at all. In Ibadan, where I live, there are 40 stations. Yeah, the population can support it, but the economy cannot. And so you have so many stations now looking for buyers because they are unable to economically run the station.
And the keynote speaker is none other than the chairman of Channels Media Group, Dr. John Momo. He speaks on challenges, prospects, and professionalism in the media space.
It is obvious that the digital age has led to massive disruption in its sector of the business. And as a result of these changes, content creators are one step closer to the audiences, which now wield greater power in determining what is served by the media. Responsible journalism entails that whatever facts and figures are gathered are cross-checked, double-checked, triple-checked, and reconfirmed before presenting such to the public for consumption. Remember, any misinformation by the media is always difficult to retrieve, and effects could be devastating. So let's place the interest of the citizens above that of the politicians. Let us live true to our role as the watchdog of the society and shun all rhetorics that are divisive and offensive in nature.
At this point, I'd like to invite Alhaji Lekun Ajia to join us here.
The event breaks into a panel discussion, and the panelists share their thoughts on various issues affecting the media practice in the country.
Who has been protecting the broadcasters? I would say nobody.
Professionalism means meeting the standards that matter, which is what I think SNB is all about, to set the standard. The conventional mass media have also had to embrace this new digital media. So if you can't beat them, you join them.
Your name? Do solemnly swear.
Next, inductees take the sworn statement on oath, promising to uphold and protect the interest of the society.
So help me God.
So help me God. The presentation of certificates to the inductees marks the end of the first major step of the society that seeks to, among other things, coordinate, set standards, and admit all professional broadcasters in the country. Dari Ido, Channels Television News.
Again, thank you for staying with us. That's, of course, our next conversation this morning. And Dr. Vincent Maduka joins us this morning. He is a former Director General of the NTA. He joins us virtually. Thank you for joining us this morning. Well, somehow, why do I feel this must be something very cheering and joyous for you personally, being a former DG of the NTA?
Indeed, it is. As was pointed out at the event itself, the attempt to establish a society like this has been mooted several years ago. And it might be a form of name dropping, but I recall that at the earliest time when this society was first mooted, there were people like, I think, Stella Bassi, there was Eno Iruku of the FRCN. I think it was NDC then, maybe FRCN. FRCN came into being about 1977 or thereabouts. So for it to have hung in the limbo for so long is something that we're glad to see off and running now.
Well, in the registration in 1994 is something that we cannot, of course, remonstrate. I mean, it's something that you know very well. But 1994 till now, it's a very long time away. And the first set of people, of members, are just being inducted, with you being one of them. One wonders, what in your opinion could be responsible or could have been responsible for that long limbo, as you put it, and how do we ascertain sustainability this time around?
Well, maybe we learned our lesson. A difficulty that's inherent in a society like this is that it's composed of very many different professions. And if the members of those other professions are quite happy and merry in their other callings, a society like this latest one might suffer a bit. You're going to find there are engineers in this group who belong to active professional bodies, and they're probably quite happy to go along without driving for the takeoff of this one. I'm just suggesting a possible reason. The other people there who are really first-line broadcasters, because I've been inaugurated into society, but I consider there are people who are exclusively broadcasters in their profession, that is their skills and their means of livelihood. And some other people, maybe accountants, maybe engineers like me. So just for the records, I'm not a doctor yet. There's still time, but I'm an engineer. I'm referring to the title against my name. Okay. So I don't deceive you.
Okay, sir, that brings me to the next question. Let's talk about regulation now. For the accountants, they have ANAN. For the doctors, they have the NBA. For the lawyers, they have the doctors have NMA rather, and the lawyers have the MBA. And I imagine you cannot be a member of the Nigeria Bar Association without having studied law. But you find that in broadcasting, you find a lot of people who have other callings or other first degrees who are practicing as broadcasters. So what in the future, after this inauguration, What would regulation be like if you were to become a member of the SNB? What would the requirement be in terms of your first degree? And would the SNB be making recommendations to broadcasting organizations in terms of those they should recruit? You know, I want you to speak in that regard.
Yes, the first thing is to be quite clear that there are distinctive skills and standards to be achieved in broadcasting. There's always the element of popularity or audience acceptance in the case of front-end broadcasters. These are presenters, newscasters, reporters, and so on. Those who actually stand in front of the cameras and are recognized by the audience. Now, those people have one major skill, and that is communication, either through video or through sound or both combined. There are others who are contributing skills that are different. You mentioned the accountants and engineers, for example. Now, in order for you to be a distinctive professional, as distinct from an amateur, you need to have certain recognized skills. And recognized means that somebody has examined you and found you suitable for that, that skill that you're claiming. The skill here is one of communication and authority. Now, you can communicate falsehood, you can communicate jokes as a comedian, an entertainer, simply, a singer. And you have to do so in front of the camera, and maybe you are doing it over and over. And I wouldn't call you a broadcaster. I would say you're a broadcaster when you communicate and you do so with authority, which means that your listener goes away with some new knowledge. So whether you are making a presentation written by somebody else, or you are presenting what you wrote yourself, or you are in fact reporting an event, I need to be able to take you seriously, that you are an authority, and that what you are saying is, I can take to the bank. And also the element of the ethics. Ethics means that there are certain rules in the business which you are obliged to respect for you to remain a recognized practitioner. So what are the qualifications that you need? I think basically in this country today, a university degree is not a terribly difficult thing to obtain. And I think it should be a basic qualification for any incoming person. Those who have acquired the skills through doing the work, what you call on-the-job trainees, will be required, in my view, to have done so at certain prescribed levels for so many years. For newcomers, I would say that a degree in perhaps just any discipline, because when you broadcast, you are not restricted to certain disciplines only.
Okay.
You will pass on information on a whole variety of subjects. And therefore, I wouldn't say that a degree in physics would not be acceptable for you to be a member of the Society of Broadcasters, Nigerian Broadcasters. On the other hand, you must also have skills acquired through broadcasting.
Okay, let me quickly get this one in before I throw it to my colleague Maokwe. Some years back, when I was listening to a commentary on the Nigerian broadcasting space, the analyst talked about how it felt like he was in Manhattan in the United States of America because of the diction of most of the presenters, the prevalent number of presenters that he heard on radio. And that brings us to this talk about the British RP, which we are trained with from the Nigerian Broadcast Academy, the old Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria training school. So I wonder if the SNB would be involved in regulation to this extent in terms of what the house style should be in most broadcasting houses. What should it be? Should it be the British RP, or should we just yawn and go back to sleep as having welcomed those who predominantly have American accents on our radio stations and in our broadcast television houses?
You cannot prescribe a rule in my view. In Nigeria, we're supposed, and we evaluate the quality of our English in the expression Queen's English. Now, when I studied in the UK, even my colleagues said I spoke better Queen's English than themselves. Now, what you call better there is very relative. But the point here is that every language is also localized. You have Scottish accent in English, and in Scotland, I believe 90% of the broadcasters there would employ the Scottish accent. You have Irish accent, you have Australian accent, you have the London accent, which they call Cockney. I lived in Yorkshire, which had a distinctive accent. And I'll say every one of these was acceptable. However, the BBC on its external broadcast tended to employ Queen's English because that was standard written and taught English. So if you ask what we should do in Nigeria, I think that we should adopt Queen's English. We should demand proper pronunciation of English words. I don't think we should allow a broadcaster, professional broadcaster, who makes a living broadcasting other than entertaining in terms of comedy, to come on air and say things like chief or chief. So when you ask the question, what should be the standard? I think the standard should be written English that is backed with authority. That means when you open a reference book on how to speak English, the book is authoritative. Now, I'm not the one who should talk about this because there are many aspects to broadcasting, and speech is only one of them. I mean, it's a key one because we are communicating. But I'm not an authority.
Okay, I sincerely hope that the train hasn't left the station on that one. I mean, because we now have stations which broadcast in Pidgin English and cater to that demographic. Interestingly, I think quite a number of people enjoy the stations which also broadcast in Pidgin English. So it's going to be an interesting mix. What I'm interested to know is how we intend to make sure that this is attractive. Because at the end of the day, much as, yes, standards and rules are very important, even regulation as well, populating this association and making sure that, you know, the target audience, which are broadcasters in general, you know, see this as their own and run with it and make it a success, as we've seen other associations or other associations do, will be primary. So how do we intend to ensure that the association attracts younger people, people who are coming into the industry, and even people who maybe did not know about it before now, but will think this is a bright idea and would like to be members?
I think simply that every professional body must have what is standard there. If you are talking of Pidgin as a language or means of communication, it has its own grammar. It has its own syntax. And I don't think that Queen's English would be acceptable in a Pidgin program. So that's the point, that there are rules, there are standards. There will be standards for Pidgin English. There will be standards for, I mean, you can't speak Yoruba with an Igbo accent, for instance, and say because it's a Yoruba program, anything goes. No, it has its own grammar, it has its own pronunciation rules. And so the point I'm making is that there should be one standard in one particular definition of a means of communication. Call it pidgin, call it standard English in Nigeria, but whatever it is, you have to have a skill in that area, if that is the area you are specializing in. I don't think we should be afraid and call bad English good English, or bad pidgin good pidgin, or bad Yoruba good Yoruba. So each means of communication, each medium, in what we're trying to do with a professional society, is that there are acceptable skills and standards which must be attained for you to be recognized as a professional member of that organization or that society. So there's not going to be one rule that says, for instance, that you must not speak in a certain way. But if you are going to speak a certain language or a certain mode of communication, whether it's sign language or otherwise, you must be skilled in it, and you must show proficiency in it for you to attain the standard that the society will be asking for. So I think, in fact, it's fundamental to this question of being a professional body. Professional body is a society that has rules, skills, and ethics which its members must subscribe to.
Asked Engineer Maduka is the acceptability of it, making it attractive to younger broadcasters today. If you can do that within 30 seconds, sir.
Making it attractive is that it's a paying profession, one, which I'm afraid is not so to a large extent today. Two, that it is peopled, populated by bright people, bright practitioners, whom younger people want to emulate and want to copy. You study medicine because it pays and because in society it is looked up to. So broadcasters, like in America, should be able to earn. It should be a very competitive industry. When we say people want to go into it, they have to be competent to go into it. You don't go there simply because you like the profession. If you like the profession, then you go through what it requires. The training, the skills, the experience, and the level of what I call wisdom, because there's always going to be an occasion when what you learned at school is not going to be useful. And then at that point, you delve into your experience, your wisdom, call it that. And also the profession is recognized and respected. I mean, in the past, when your son was playing football, instead of preparing for tomorrow's lesson, you beat him up for missing the point about education. Oh, you're not supposed to be playing, you're supposed to be reading. I hear today some parents tell the boys, stop reading, get out and go and kick the ball. There's money in that one. So for people to want to be broadcasters, they need to be attracted by what they see and what they know will be the benefit. And I think for a long time, people went into broadcasting because they loved it. And I think that's a very good thing. Yeah. We also want it to pay. And that's what all of us should try to work at.
Well, Engineer Maduka, there are so many questions to ask you, one of which would be, I mean, those who are saying, you know, comparing Society of Nigerian Broadcasters with the functions of the NBC and all of that, but then we're completely out of time. We'll not be able to take that on, perhaps some other time. We have to thank you so much for being a part of our conversation this morning and throwing light on the Society of Nigerian Broadcasters. Engineer Vincent Maduka is a former DG of the NTA and SNB inductee. Thank you again for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, I guess that's much of the program we can take today. Thank you so much for being a part of it. I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you for watching. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
And I'm Ogun Yusuf. Goodbye.